Today, we're honored to welcome Rick Werner to the show. How are you doing, man?
It's Wagner.
Wagner. Gotcha. Thank you.
Warner's another guy.
Yeah, man, it's an honor to have you. And I'm really excited about this. As we were talking before, minerals are a very important topic. And without them, I really feel we can't truly be the optimal versions of ourselves because it's responsible for so many things I'm sure we'll talk about today. And I'm very curious myself. What is the story that got you into this place? Like, how did you get started on the wellness journey and in service of other people?
I had, I or I have had a number of what would I call it, experiences with different minerals. But there was one that really, really got me triggered and actually got me into my business that I'm in, which is making liquid minerals. But it was very, very quickly. I had been suffering. This was in 1995. I had been suffering for about 5 years or more with arthritis in my neck, and my range of motion could go about that far before I had to turn my whole body, pain all the time. So I went into the doctor and got it X-rayed, and they came back and said, "Sure enough, you have arthritis in your neck." Now they didn't really tell me where it was and what it was, but I asked them, "Well, what can you do to fix it?" This is 1995. Their answer was, "There is no cure." Sort of like your Lyme disease thing. There's no
Right.
cure. I said, "Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm very depressed." They said, you need to take aspirin the rest of your life. And or if you really, really get bad, we can go in with a scalpel and we'll scrape off the calcium off of the vertebrae. Well, that was about as exciting as, walking through a swamp with mosquitoes or something. But there was no way I was ever going to do that. But about 2 months later, I had a different company at that time, and one of my staff came to me and said, Rick, my neighbor discovered this mineral supplement that seemed to help her daughter's hair grow. I don't have any hair on my head. And she said it helped her daughter's hair grow. Well, I wasn't taking any supplements whatsoever at that point. But I said, well, I'll give it a shot. Why not? And what it was at that point was called Body Essential Silica Gel. And I didn't even, well, I knew what silica sand was because I golfed, and it was so you get into the sand trap, and that's silica sand. Anyway, I took it. I went and bought some, and I took it for about 6 weeks. I had to then go back east. On the bottle it said refrigerate after opening, which I did, but I wouldn't. I wasn't going to haul it around the country to keep taking. It was a 10-day trip. At the end of 10 days, all of this pain that had been slowly diminishing came back in my neck, and I said, "There's something going on here." Um, once I got back home, I started taking it again. Within 2 days, the pain curve went back down to where it had been prior to the trip. And I said, this really got me curious. So, bottom line, 9 months later, I had no more arthritis. This was in '95, and I haven't had any twinge of pain since. And so I got on a mission. I said, I've got to figure out. Well, first of all, I went to the company. The company was a German company, and I went to them to see whether I could sell it using multi-level. And they were very difficult to work with, and I determined that that wasn't going to work. I said, I got to figure out how to make this stuff myself. Well, I happened to have a good friend who was a chemist, and it took about a year and a half to figure out how to where to go to get the raw material and how to make it. And it was so funny because at that point, the National Academy of Sciences, that's the department in the government that sets the criteria for how much you should take of certain minerals, the RDAs. Well, they don't address silica nor sulfur. Well, these are two very essential elements, and they don't even have an RDA for them. And I went to them in 2000, approximately, maybe 2005, in that range, and they had no one I could even talk to back in Washington. So they're not very user friendly at all. But I the dosing at this point was the gel was 375 milligrams a day. So I said, well, that worked for me. And so we basically modeled our product after that. And it's a silica. It's not a gel, it's a liquid, but it's very effective. And so then I started doing some research. In fact, I decided to get a clinical nutrition degree. And I just fortuitously, all this, a lot of serendipity has happened. But I figured out that we all really need these minerals. In fact, I ask people, what do you think you come from? Where do you think you come from? What are you? What we are is the earth and water. That's it.
Exactly.
There's nothing else. Nothing else. Everything you see around you, everything you are, everything you think came from the earth. And so it's very, very important for people to recognize this. I was never taught this in school. Grammar school, high school, college, never, they didn't talk about these things. Well, it turns out that that's probably the most important thing that we need to know about for our health and optimal health. It's the balance. We must be balanced to be optimally healthy. And a fascinating thing about silica is we, as a species, used to get a lot of silica daily in our bread because it's concentrated in the outside husks of grains. Well, prior to the advent of the combine and automated farming, we would harvest the grain by hand. You'd thresh it, knock all the seeds off. You would then take that to the grinder, and they would use a stone grinder, and they would grind all the berries into flour. Well, that had a lot of silica in it. Subsequent to the advent of combines, we now automatically remove all of the husks from any grain harvested. And this has only really happened in maybe the last 40 or 50 years. But so and if you think about the calcium versus silica issue, we did not consume dairy after we were weaned up until maybe 100 years ago or less. And in fact, so what are we told now? Take 1,000 milligrams of calcium, mainly in dairy, which we weren't ever designed to, except as an infant to eat, but no silica. Well, that imbalance is huge, and from my perspective, it's the cause of all arthritis. It's the cause of osteoporosis, and a number of other issues, joint issues. They're replacing joints now, with artificial joints rather than telling people that they need to get balanced in these two elements, and they're out of balance in them, and that's the cause. So anyway, that's the reason that I'm in this business, and discovered that you got to have them. You've got to have all your minerals.
Absolutely. That's an excellent story. I got a couple follow up points to that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I find it so interesting because it's a very common answer, like you heard, um, in terms of like healing from your doctors. It's like this is just going to happen. For the rest of your life, and it's a very common thing.
Yes.
And as we know, it's a great feeling to show them that it's not true, and we get to the other side.
Well,
Oh,
just as an aside, I went back to see my doctor I was with Kaiser at the time. I do not have health insurance anymore. But I went back to him, and I ran into him in the hallway, and I said, you know, Doctor So and So, I have reversed my arthritis. Would you like to know what I did? And it was like a steel wall just came down right in front of me or him, and his eyes sort of glazed over. He didn't even respond to me. He just turned around and walked away. And that's Western medicine today. It's it's all run by the pharmaceutical industry. And if there's not a drug for it, forget it.
It's very surprising, but I think things are changing, but just making progress with that. Yeah, so it sounded like minerals are very pivotal in your healing in terms of the response, and you also mentioned. I like to say this as well. Everything you see in the mirror, it came from the earth, right? Like the proteins, the minerals. Well,
Yes,
that was an excellent point there.
yes, it is. And in fact, you know, all the protein and the sugars, they are produced by things that grow out of the ground. So you first of all have to have roots into the dirt to pull out the minerals and then interact with the sun's energy to create these other compounds that are also integral to anything living.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about this a little bit, but can you explain to the audience what is the importance of minerals in our body and perhaps some things that we can look out for if we're not getting enough minerals in terms of like symptoms and things like that?
Um, I'm going to say that uh, anything that is where you feel off, you don't feel right, you have a mineral issue, either an imbalance or a deficiency. Um, the yeah. So the first thing is keep in mind before you run to the doctor, you know, take a look at the book and let's see what mineral you may be deficient in, because we have a whole chapter on just uh, symptoms and what deficiencies they may have been caused by. Um, I'll tell you one that was really significant to me was I I had when I was a kid I had cavities and I had lots of fillings. And the fillings that they use and that they still do use today, are a lot of, are called amalgams because they don't want to call them mercury fillings.
Right.
But 50% of every filling in your mouth is mercury. Mercury is the second deadliest element on the planet. And so there are some essential, most elements are essential, but there are some that are not. At least from the standpoint of putting in your body. And I mean, right now, the pharmaceutical industry uses uh, what's it called, thimerosal as a preservative in a
Yeah.
lot of drugs and other things like vaccines. So I know RFK Jr. is trying to figure out how to stop that.
Yeah.
But I had I had 14 amalgams, and I heard about the mercury issue, and uh, in fact, then I got a hair test done, and the I was off the charts in mercury. Well, I said I got to get rid of these guys. Well, one of the things that you need to be careful of is when you if you do have your amalgams removed, you need to have it done safely. I was admonished to do that, and I ignored it. And I used my regular dentist, and he just went in there and drilled them out, and then filled them with plastic. And what he didn't understand was the drill is literally vaporizing the elements until you are inhaling a lot of it. And basically, I just took the mercury out of my teeth and put it into my body. It was really, really bad. I mean, I had such incredible fatigue. It was crazy. A lack of or loss of memory. It was off the charts bad. So I though figured out how to get what they call a chelation. And there were doctors in San Diego that do chelation. So I went to one. Well, even at that point, they knew how to, stick a needle in you and give you a shot, and they knew what the chelator did, but they didn't know what the side effects would be. Well, when you do chelation, they're putting a substance into your bloodstream that will bind up minerals. And they're thinking, okay, we'll just bind up with all the mercury floating around in your blood. Well, that's okay, but it also absorbs all the other minerals as well. And you need a steady supply of these little critters um, in your blood all the time. I didn't want to sit in the thing with a needle and have them just pump it, pump the chelation through me. And at the end, then he didn't ever tell me, oh, you better take a multi-mineral afterwards, resupply. In fact, there was some minerals on or multi-minerals on the reception's desk above, and I asked him about it, and he said, "Ah, you don't need them." After my sixth injection, and it was working. I mean, it was pulling out the mercury, but after my sixth injection, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling like I had an elephant sitting on my chest, and I knew I was out of something. So I woke up and I said, "Okay, what did I do today?" And then I remembered that I had gone to get another injection of the chelator, and so I said, "This is not what it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing." I got up, and we were making our minerals at the time, and we had magnesium. I took some magnesium, and within 5 minutes, all of the pressure was gone. That's how important magnesium is.
Wow.
Yes, hugely important. And so we that was a second one. I've had a whole number of them of mineral issues or issues, health issues that were resolved by minerals. There was one was in uh, uh, Club Med down in Mexico, and I was all excited about doing all that swimming and the athletics and all that, but I perspired a lot too. And that night, I, uh, I couldn't go to dinner. So I sent my wife to dinner, and I just laid there in bed. I woke up in the middle of the night on the floor. I said, "What's going on here?" Well, I had read an article in National Geographic a year or two before about how important salt is when you perspire. Turns out you're burning off your electrolytes: sodium, chloride, potassium, and magnesium. And that's what happened to me. So when my wife came home from dinner, I asked her if she'd get me some water and salt. And I knew that the salt was sea salt because it was clumpy. And I had gone to breakfast that morning and I didn't put any salt on my eggs because I didn't want it to be too salty. So I hadn't taken any electrolytes, worked out or played all day, got sick that night, took some salt. The next morning I was fine, but it was sea salt.
Wow.
So I mean, it's crazy, but these experiences all came together, and I started thinking about them and remembering them. And another one, a really interesting one, was zinc. I would, and talking about issues, I would get the flu every year up until I discovered the minerals. Every year, and I'd be down in bed for a week, just couldn't do anything. One episode of that, I finally got well, but then I recognized that I couldn't smell, and I couldn't taste. And with the whole COVID thing, you can't smell or taste, right? Well, I told, and it had gone on. It lasted for at least 6 weeks before I had just got out of frustration. Told my mom about it, and so she was just. This is when the LA Times had a magazine called Parade, and she was reading through it, and there was an article that said, if you've lost your sense of taste and smell, take zinc. And I said, okay. And I went to the pharmacy and got, no, it was at a Vaughn's. And they used to have supplements, but they don't anymore. The big supermarkets don't. But anyway, I bought some zinc, started taking it, swear 2 days later, I could smell and taste. It was
Wow.
the zinc, and what happens is the body uses zinc to fight infection. You know, and we're designed internally to be able to deal with all of these issues that Western medicine is trying to deal with and can't naturally. With and the zinc was a perfect example. And it's not hard to get deficient. You have to be very focused on making sure you have an adequate level in your system. And there is a part of my book is just really addressing, hopefully to scientists that read this, is that we don't know very much at all. Really, we know how they work, but we do not know um, all of the issues and all of the potentials of the minerals. And so we really, really need to start focusing on this a lot more than we do. It's not as profitable. You're not going to make lots of money, but we need to understand this. So
Definitely.
yeah,
Those are some great stories, like in terms of healing, because a lot of people like they just kind of live with these things. They don't really understand the cause, so it's really, I think, eye opening for some people.
I hope so. I hope so. And it's kind of funny. They talk. You read a lot of articles about salt and how bad salt is, and yet it's like salt is like sugar. If you refine it, it's not good for you. It's because it creates an imbalance. Eat sea salt, and I highly recommend that to everyone out there. Eat sea salt every day, and you're going to be far better off than you ever were before.
I was just going to ask you about that, so it's interesting because um, we still have a lot of people who are kind of afraid of salt, and I feel like there's a difference between salt and sodium. Like, of course, you got the girl with the umbrella salt, and then you got the real salt. So, like, what is the difference between like these things, and help? Can you help clear that up for people?
Yes. Okay. Sea salt is basically salt water, ocean water, dehydrated, and what's in it is all of the minerals on the planet. When it rains, water hits the dirt, it flows downhill to the ocean. In that process, it picks up minerals. In fact, it's the only transport mechanism on the planet for minerals is water. So you have to you got to look at where you're getting it. And if natural springs will have certain elements, but not all of them. And so you need to be able to supplant that. In fact, if you look at the ocean, it's always very healthy, except around humanity, because we've dumped so much stuff into the ocean. Anything living around that is deformed or dead. But you go out, 5, 10, 15 miles, it's totally different. And the water is clear and blue, but also all the animals that are living in there are very healthy. They don't have to worry about whether they're getting their minerals. They're getting them every time they open their mouth and swallow water and breathe. And so what happens then is that we humans take the salt, we take the ocean water, we evaporate the water off. Then, though, we refine out the sodium and the chloride. Now, I don't know who ever thought of doing that and why, but it makes no sense. But anyway, what we get now, if you go to the store and you buy salt, you're getting sodium and chloride. That's it. Two elements, not the rest of the 75 or 80 that we need. And so we're, and when people are getting imbalanced primarily, but also when you take distilled water, that water binds up minerals. It loves water, loves minerals, and so if it's going to go into your system, you're thinking you're getting nice pure water, you're going to get sick. And virtually anyone that I know of that has taken distilled water has gotten ill because it's literally binding up the minerals like the water from rain as it's going out of your system. Not
Yeah,
good. But the sodium and the chloride is like sugar. Sugar, we should not be eating refined sugar. We should be eating it as a complex in either vegetables or fruits. That's where we should get our sugar. Okay.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, when you look in nature, there's never just pure H2O anywhere. There's always minerals dissolved into it.
Yes, yes. I think that I think even in rainwater, there's minerals in it because there's dust in the air, so it's getting picked up no matter what. But it's very limited until you get a lot of sources going from the earth into the ocean. It's the earth is not evenly distributed with all the minerals. There are concentrations of them. So it's important to know that you got to go to the end where everything has been accumulated and agglomerated.
Definitely. Another thing you mentioned was like the mercury in our mouths, like because not all minerals are necessarily essential for life, right? We
Right.
got these heavy metals, and honestly, like I found remineralization for cavities actually really useful for that. Like the minerals in terms of like um, kind of building the tooth back up. So like the procedure isn't necessary. I found that to be very valuable as well.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and we have to be very, very careful what we believe and aware that what we're being told may or may not be the truth. And who knows, maybe what I'm saying isn't the truth either. I think it is. Um, but I challenge anyone to, if they have questions, is to research it themselves and see what's happening out there.
100%. I think that's a great principle in general. Like the pursuit of truth and wisdom, right? It's like so many people these days, like we just kind of like closed off to things. We kind of like our beliefs. But if we can become a curious individual, just ask questions and not like be offended by things, that's super valuable.
That's
Just
so,
having an open mind, right?
yes, exactly. There's, there's no one size fits all. We are all individuals. And what's good for you may not be good for me, but we should all be listening and not being arbitrary at all and or imposing our theories or ideas on everyone else. You tell people
Exactly.
what you think you believe in and show them how it's helped you. Go for it. Yep. All the way. Yeah. In every aspect of life, we need
Yeah.
to have the that opening. Yep.
I feel like the key to that is like just living by your own values and having your own standards. So you can hear other opinions and just be like, interesting, right?
Right.
And if it works for you, use it. If not, let it go.
Right. Exactly. I think that's a great philosophy in life. For sure.
100%. I know you'd like to talk about, um, before I get there, actually, uh, I would like to talk about heavy metals real quick.
Okay.
In terms of, because I know you talked about chelation. So, are people approaching uh, chelation in a sense that it's perhaps harming them? And also, how are people accumulating heavy metals within their bodies?
Let's see. Let's go to. I don't think that many people really yet understand the concept of chelation and how it works and what they should be trying to do. But the main heavy metals are mercury, lead, cadmium, aluminum, and there's one other one, but those are the four primaries. We
Arsenic.
arsenic, right?
Yeah.
We use the mercury and the lead and the aluminum pretty much daily in a lot of areas. So those are the three that I think are really important to pay attention to. Most people are getting vaccines. They're getting mercury there. They're getting uh, they have mercury amalgam fillings. There's a lot of ways that they're getting the mercury. The aluminum is everywhere, and we need to be focusing on cutting that way back. Um, the lead we used historically a lot. It's been removed fairly well, but when I was a kid, I grew up in Orange County, and we had leaded gas. I was an athlete, and I would work out during the day, and then at night I'd go home. It was hard to breathe. It hurt, and I know it was the lead in the air. It was, smog was really, really bad, and that smog was mainly petroleum dust and lead. Why did they put lead in gasoline? I
Interesting.
don't know, but those are the three really bad ones. So lead, mercury, and aluminum, and they're everywhere. So you got to be very aware of what if you're getting any kind of medical treatment, what's in it. We never ask that, and you know what? Your average doctor couldn't tell you anyway uh, what they're giving you and what's in it. They don't know. So uh, yeah, It's, I think a lot of it, well, an interesting point. We've known about lead really for a long time. I believe that the fall of Rome was caused by lead pipes.
Really?
Yes, the Romans figured out they didn't need to have an aqueduct. Well, they had to use an aqueduct, but when the water got to the city, they needed to distribute it, and they didn't have other. The level of knowledge of metals was very, very low at that point, but they could easily use and manipulate lead, and they could make it into pipes. So they delivered all this water to the Roman citizens full of lead,
Hmm.
and and then they were well. You've heard of the Mad Hatter?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, oh, that guy was real. He was real. He made hats, and they used lead to uh, form the hats and form the skin, and he made them crazy. That's what happened in Rome. They just kind of went nuts. So um, the what was the other one on the lead? Uh, I don't know, but it really goes on and on. There's so many different examples of it. Well, in gas and um, what was the other one? Well, hat making. Oh, gold. Gold is refined using lead.
Really?
Yes, it is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the people that were working in the refineries at that point were not real together. The lead just messed their brains up, and the mercury does the same thing. So we call them neurotoxins. The body, and I think the reason is that the body recognizes that they are not good. So we have no use for them. But also letting them float around in the bloodstream is causing damage. So what's the body do? It hides them, it sequesters them someplace. And the brain is an easy place to put it.
Definitely. I mean, to my
So,
understanding, is like people use a lot of weak chelators like chlorella and spirulina, which they're great for like maintenance. I feel, but I feel like people take them in too high of doses, and from my understanding, they're not strong enough to bind them throughout the entire body. So, like you said, they kind of end up in like the fatty tissues. Am I right on that?
I think that you are, and it's more quantity. We have so much of the heavy metals, and we're not uh, really focusing on getting enough of the natural products in, or they aren't. There's just not enough. Um, I think that it, well, there's a methodology for doing the chelation which really seems to work. In fact, I put together a protocol for it, and it's worked so far on me. But
Awesome.
But it does use the chelator. It uses EDTA, which is a calcium-based chelator. What the protocol though is you take about a 5 mineral blend that I put together, which actually activates the cells to kick the heavy metals out into the bloodstream. Then what you do is you take within 15, 20 minutes later, you take the EDTA. It goes into the bloodstream. It binds up everything. Okay. Your liver and your kidneys are working overtime to get that out of the system. So you have to support the liver and the kidneys with, and I do that with dandelion and milkfissil. But then, within about an hour after you do this, you want to take the multi-mineral again so that you can resupply, and electrolytes probably is, but you want to resupply the bloodstream with the minerals that have been removed. Otherwise, you're going to have issues. So
Right. I
it's,
mean, that would make sense.
yeah, kick them out of the cells, grab them out of the blood, then resupply with minerals that don't have the heavies in them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
So I know you like to talk about other esoteric healing modalities. Is there like anything in specific you would like to get out to the audience?
on what? On what?
Other esoteric healing modalities?
Like, what would be an esoteric modality?
I guess in terms of like the mind.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
It's all good. I could be thinking of something else. My bad. uh, but in terms of, to back up a little bit, in terms of the heavy metals and how we accumulate them through like the environment, I noticed that people do certain testing that is perhaps not up to par. Is it? And because there may be false flags, or there may be even more.
That's one of the things that I really want people to recognize is we don't know everything, and the what we're using right now for testing is hair mineral analysis, and the logic is that everything is running in through the bloodstream, and then the hair will pick up these elements. Well, um, I I think that's a good methodology. Is it the only methodology? No, I don't think so. Um, i- is it full on accurate? No. And a lot of it depends on who's doing the testing. So we've developed instruments that can, look at the minerals, but are they, and is everything has been done by averages. So they've taken, let's say, these blood tests. No, well, all blood tests are averages as well. So you do a blood test, you've got if you're within a particular range, which is, let's say, two standard deviations around the mean of what everybody that's had a blood test or whatever, um, then you're okay. Well, is that right? I don't think so. Everyone is different. And so, the whole testing system that we've got going on right now, I don't think there's any one answer. Um, so you can do hair. You can do blood, tissue analysis, which doesn't sound good to me at all. So we are in our infancy in the ability to be able to determine what really is going on. We certainly know that the heavy metals are bad. There's no doubt about that. But what about the others? And where should we be with them? I can guarantee you that most people are over calcified. You just look at the number of people that have osteoporosis, and it's being blamed on not enough calcium. Turns out that what osteoporosis is a lack of the collagen matrix of the bone. So when that starts to dry out, which is the marrow and makes your blood, it makes all of your or a lot of your um, uh, things for dealing with viruses and bacteria. But what where was I going with that? The um, it, now, okay,
All good. All
I'm
good, mate.
expressing my age here. The um, where was I? What was I? What was I?
Basically talking about how the terrain can be balanced.
Oh, okay, yeah, and actually in bone. So I was talking about, yeah, calcium versus the marrow. Your all bones are about 20 or from 20 to 40% calcium. The other portion, the 80 to 60 to 80%, is the marrow or the collagen matrix. When you lose your collagen matrix, your bones become brittle. Calcium by itself is brittle. So what's happening is it's not that you're losing calcium. In fact, if you take more calcium, you're just going to get worse. You need to be taking silica. Silica builds collagen. It's the
Exactly.
magic element that makes the stuff that holds every cell in our bodies together in the right spot.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
What I meant to ask you was basically take people taking control over their own health. Like, because we have, I feel like, because in America we have about 60% of people have chronic disease, right? And it's not that the solution doesn't exist. It's just that the people aren't asking the right questions in order to get to the solution, right? It's people don't understand that they can get well unless they keep repeating these questions on repeat. They have these beliefs. Until they shift the internal terrain in a different aspect I'm talking about, we're not going to see the solution because we don't have internal questions.
that's right. That's right. Well, and you know the word disease is really two words: dis and ease. And
Exactly.
so you go to you are at dis-ease, so you go to the doctor. He says, "Oh, you have blah 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 blah. This disease. Well, you don't have a, you do not have a disease. You just aren't balanced. You don't have your system isn't working right, and it's not the organ actually even that is doing that is having the problem. It's the cells in the organ, and the cells cannot work without the right minerals um, in within them, so that they can activate the enzymes that the cells make and make the cell work. So we have to go far deeper than we have done with Western medicine and look at not only what our cells are doing and how they're malfunctioning, but why.
Absolutely.
And so it's adequate good sugars, adequate fats, good fats, non-processed, and adequate protein, and then the minerals. Really going down to that cellular level, what's happening is the cells, you've got DNA and RNA. Your DNA tells the cell when to reproduce and to split and to duplicate itself. The RNA are the instructions, and they are basically instructions to the cell to produce enzymes. And these enzymes are what the cell uses to work, flat out. But what happens? So what happens is the RNA sends out a message to the cell. It then is grabbed by the what they call an endoplasmic reticulum, which is just another little thing in the cell, and that goes out and grabs amino acids that are in the cell and builds a protein, um, and from that, then though it must be catalyzed or activated by a particular mineral, and if you don't have that mineral in your cell, it won't work flat out.
Definitely.
And so it's so funny. But we're not. Our medicine doesn't look at that. They want to block a bodily function or suppress something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this a little bit throughout, but can you briefly go over uh, like the synergy between minerals? Because I understand there's a balance between certain things like calcium and magnesium, right? So just certain examples like that.
What's so funny is that I don't necessarily believe that there is synergy, let's say. I believe that if you've got adequate levels of the different minerals, all of the minerals that we need in your cells, they will work. Do you have to have a certain ratio or take a certain ratio, let's say calcium and magnesium? I don't believe so. The body will hold what it needs and get rid of the rest. We intuitively know how to do that. Um, uh, it's people come to me and they say, what was it? I got an inquiry the other day. Your silica, how much do I need of your silica to get 92 milligrams of silica? And I said, well, why do you need 92 milligrams? Who told you that? Oh, well, that's what's in Fiji water, and we use Fiji water to chelate. And I thought, oh, again, who's thinking this stuff up? Well, a good marketing person probably. Oh yeah, just drink Fiji water and you'll get all the silica you need. I don't buy that either, but I do like Fiji water. It's good, but is that the solution? It's only a very very small part of it. But and synergistically, I mean, basically that's all that's in that water. So I think the greatest synergy of all of them is the balance in seawater. That's the one.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's bottom line. But I think all of us can have different balances, and so, but that to me would be the greatest synergy. I mean, if you, and this is another theory, but I believe life evolved out of the ocean, and so if it did, and a lot of other scientists and other people do too, um, I don't think we were dropped down here by an alien. We evolved. But the issue is, what did we evolve out of? A full, complete balance of all the minerals, and that's it. There was nothing else in there. There's no vegetables growing or anything else. Interestingly, iodine is an interesting element in that there was a scientist in France, Louis Couvrane, who studied minerals a lot. Basically, he determined that iodine isn't a naturally occurring element on the planet. It is made by kelp, the big red kelp, and
Wow.
and so when if you want iodine in a natural format, take seaweed. Seaweed is a very very healthy food stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, it's good. It makes the iodine.
Very interesting. I mean, yeah, we talked about a lot of great things today. I really enjoyed it. We talked about your story, which is amazing in terms of the healing, the importance of minerals and heavy metals, and basically what to look out for. I'm curious, is there anything you would really like to add for the audience, or did we pretty much cover it?
I think we really covered it. My parting comment would be: don't believe everything you're told. And if you are at dis-ease, it's more than likely a dietary balance of minerals that you have to be focusing on. You don't, you, most disease today is not caused by bacteria or viruses or fungi. And I mean, fungi is another story all on its own, but it's not, that's not what is causing the disease. It's the lack of the cell to be able to adequately function the way it was designed and evolved. I think that's the most important thing. So just focus on getting away from unrefined food, or I mean, yeah, getting away from unrefined food. No, do not take refined food. Throw all that out. Only unrefined organic food is what you need to be consuming.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing all your insights with us. I'm sure people are going to want to get connected with you and your work. Where can they go for that?
Well, I did do a book, wrote a book, and it's out now on Amazon, and it's called Balance Your Terrain. and balance your terrain. And so I would highly recommend. I think there's a lot of good. It's basically my history and then what I've learned so far. I'm sure there's things that aren't quite right, but we have a long way to go before we are omnipotent in our knowledge.
Absolutely.
Anyway, the book is available on Amazon. You can just order it right online and you get it delivered quick. We have some here at the office too. So,
Got it. Awesome. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed this.
Anthony, it was a pleasure. You take
All
care.
right. You too.
Remember, take your minerals.